Hello, my name is John and today on Mono Story we're going to be talking about the Kamunabi and how they are liars. So let's get into it and find out what it's all about.
I know they don't trust you.
Or the Senate, or the Republic, or democracy for that matter.
I have to admit, my trust in them has been shaken.
Why?
Formerly known as the Counter-Sorcerer Army and has been in operations for 18 years, the Kamunabi is the ruling party of Japan which was established after the Seitei War. It is run by 9 leaders and it is filled with a bunch of different sorcerers with different abilities and runs different squads for different missions or objectives, and their main goal is to eliminate any threats to the nation. They are currently assisting in protecting the enchanted blade users as well as reclaiming them from the people who stole them from Kunishige. Recently there have been a few revelations that show us that the Kamunabi have done things within the story that are not actually true. The biggest one that we can tell is that the statements were made from the Kamunabi as well as other individuals that the master swordsman Akimura Soga was crazy. However, when we first speak to him, when Yuta speaks to Akimura Soga, his reactions and speech was very controlled and elegant to the point where he was able to make logical statements. The other big point we could say where the Kamunabi is not telling us everything that they should be is where Yuta mentions that it was Kunishige's fault and the enchanted blade users who made the world worse. And this also is a bit uncertain as for Yuta, he lost his wife, therefore in his mind any action done either by the Kamunabi or the enchanted blade users will always seem to be negative. However, there are some elements in the story that show us that the world didn't get better after the Seitei War. So there may be some truth to what Yuta is saying. Now that we know that there are some lies within the story, even though the Kamunabi mention them and we perceive them to be the truth, what else could the Kamunabi not be telling us or be lying to us, creating a different perception of what we think of in the story? And firstly, we need to understand that this is common practice when most winners generally talk about the war, as they are always going to look at it from their perspective. So we are going to see that as we get closer to understanding the Seitei War, there may be some things within it that are heinous or very gruesome, but the Kamunabi have covered it up and created a lie and perception of the war to be the way it is today. So we could look at a clear example from the Seitei War being the Shokokus or the villains against the enchanted blade users and the mainland. The first thing we have to think about is why were they revolting against the mainland? Because if Akimura Soga committed a mass genocide against these people, then they must have been doing something right, or they were going to break the treaty, which means that Akimura Soga knew that these people were bad and he still got rid of them even though there was a treaty and a peace deal made. So the Kamunabi had to cover it up and blame Akimura Soga for this incident, as maybe there was something else that happened during the Seitei War that caused this mass genocide, not necessarily Akimura Soga. Another thing the Kamunabi could be lying about or not telling us about is the relationship between Akimura Soga and Chihiro and how that works. They may already know that Akimura Soga and Chihiro have a blood relation. However, we don't know what that is entirely. We know that Kunishige was his brother-in-law, meaning that at least at the very minimum he's his uncle, but it could also be his father, and I would still love that. Hands down, if that happens, one of the best stories of all time. But going back to the main point, will we find out what the Kamunabi know? Because if we find out that Akimura Soga and potentially his sister or wife was the reason for the mass genocide, then maybe there was something else that the Shokokus did that caused Akimura Soga to change, because Kunishige trusted him with all the other swords, which means that he was one of the most trustworthy and loyal people. But to turn on Kunoshige and all the other Enchanted Blade users, something must have happened that the Kabunabi is again lying about. They must have known the power of Magatsumi as well, because when the sword is put back, all the other swords are left as is. However, Magatsumi needed a seal. So how much potential did Magatsumi have is unknown to us yet compared to the other swords. But let's be real here. Magatsumi allows the user, Akimura Soga, to take over other people's bodies, quite literally becoming them. That is something that the Kabunabi would want to keep under wraps. And do they even know when Akimura Soga takes over a body, is that his real body or is that a projection and his real body is still protected back in the jail cell in the Kabunabi headquarters?
Why are you really here?
Because you're going to tell me something. Where is my mother?
And that is my thoughts on the Kabunabi and how they are liars. And I'd like to know more about the Kabunabi because there is something going on in that organization where there are things that we need to know that they are either not telling us or they've told us something that is not the truth. I mean, we are still waiting for the traitor of the Kabunabi and how they were able to give access to the Hishaku on not only being able to find the enchanted blades, but also able to enter the Kabunabi's headquarters with ease. And more things I hope will come out with regards to the Seitei War and how they relate to the Kabunabi and what happened. And again, I keep saying it, but the Seitei War is one of, if not the biggest moment. Once we get the Seitei War, everything should be answered. Till then though, we have to wait and keep on reading until we get to that point. But I want to hear what you think about the Kabunabi. Are they liars, or am I the one that is misreading this situation and they are telling us the truth about everything? So please write that down in the comment section below. I also want to thank you so much for continuing to watch Kagurabachi content on this channel. My name is John from Mono Story. If you haven't already liked, subscribed and pressed the bell button, please do so. If you want to continue on watching on this channel, please click a video up above. If not, until next time, I will see you on another Mono Story.